Present.
Collier.
Here.
Crawford.
Present.
Dyes. Drew. Foster.
Here.
Hyatt.
Present.
Kerr. Leahy.
Present.
Lee.
Here.
Mayor Pietri.
Present.
McLean.
Here.
Mitchell.
Present.
Mulcahy.
Here.
John Neal.
Present.
Joe Neal. Nicholson.
Present.
Pickles.
Present.
Roy.
Here.
Smith. Smith. I'm going to call him as president. I heard him check in earlier. Wotton.
Present.
Yamada.
Present.
Regional Chair Henry is here.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith is here now, if you can hear me.
Councillor Smith, we can see you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dyes is here.
Okay. So, members of council, just before we start, I wanted to just take an opportunity to thank our staff here at the region for allowing and getting this meeting together again. I also want to say thank you to the mayors and councillors and all of the communities that make up the region for the great work that you're doing and the positive messaging you're sending. And I really do want to thank our social services staff and our economic development staff for the great work they're doing in the community during these challenging times. So now I'd like to move on to other business. I'm going to ask our CEO, Elaine Baxter-Tahir, to give an introduction. Okay. Maybe what we'll do is just give us 1 minute. We're having one technical difficulty, and we will be on this right now. So just give us 1 second, please.
Okay, I think I'm set. Can you hear me?
Okay. So now go ahead, please.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. Sorry about that. I just wanted to do a quick introduction before I turn it over to Dr. Kyle and our commissioners. I wanted to thank all staff in the region for the tremendous resilience and flexibility that they've shown over the past couple of weeks. I wanted to let you know that we now have more than 1,100 staff working from home, and they're meeting on a daily or weekly basis with their staff through Teams and other platforms. So as a result, many of the services, in addition to what what the province has defined as essential services are continuing at the region but being managed remotely. Today, Dr. Kyle will provide an update from public health's perspective, and you'll hear from the Commissioner of Social Services and the Treasurer, who will both address items and the motions that are before you in the subject of the report. I would also like to acknowledge the behind-the-scene workers, as I call them, the corporate services staff and the staff from finance. It's been their incredible work over the last month that really has enabled us to turn around how we deliver services in very short notice. With that, in IT, for example, our VPN network has been expanded from 1,100 working lines to 3,300, and we're soon to go to 8,000. As you obviously can see, we're doing our council meetings remotely, and we've done a number of telephone enhancements, which has enabled all of our call centers now to be managed remotely from homes. No, my mic's on. Can you continue to hear me? Okay. Sorry about that. In human resources and legal, they're working diligently on a plan for redeployment of staff should that be necessary. And they're also aggressively hiring to make sure that we're fully staffed in our long-term care facilities. The area that we're now looking at is the financial analysis of the impact of this time. It's still very preliminary, so we're not very far along in that yet. We'll have a better sense of where we stand in May and June. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Dr. Kyle, but I do want to thank all of our staff again for the incredible flexibility and dedication that they've shown over the past 4 weeks. Thank you very much.
So good morning, everybody. I will be very brief with my from a public health perspective, our prime focus continues to be case and contact management. The voice of public health online continues to be durham.ca/novel coronavirus. On that, we report out on a daily basis information with respect to our COVID cases. That can be accessed on our dashboard at durham.ca/COVID cases, all one word. I have been, for the past couple of weeks, issuing a daily message, and my message is amplified on all our social media platforms. We also are reporting out the status of outbreaks in Durham region, both COVID-19 and non-COVID-19 related, and these can be accessed at durham.ca/outbreak report. The Health Incident Management Group executive has been meeting daily for weeks. I would be remiss in not thanking the CAO's office and the other regional departments for their ongoing assistance and support. And finally, Chair, all of you wear many hats, including being Durham's Board of Health. Thank you for your inquiries. Thank you for your patience as we work up your issues. And thank you for your understanding if our answers are not what you're looking for or somewhat miss the mark. But we're doing our best to meet your needs as the members of our Board of Health. Chair, those are my comments, and I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kyle. The one other issue I would like to raise is that The commissioners, myself, and many of our staff are in daily and weekly contact with all of the local municipalities. We're working very closely with them on a number of issues. The CIOs are speaking twice a week. So I wanted to let everybody know that all of the municipalities are working very well together. And at this point, I'm going to ask the Commissioner of Social Services to walk through her presentation, which is an update on where the various provincial and federal announcements are today. And as you know, this changes practically on a daily basis. So over to you, Stella.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Mr. Chair?
Who is speaking?
Joe Neal.
Yes, Councillor Neal.
Are we going to be given an opportunity to ask questions of Dr. Kyle? Now or after everybody speaks?
Okay, you know what, that's what we'll do, if it's okay, we will start, because Dr. Kyle's here and we never know if he'll have to leave. Dr. Kyle, are you available to take questions now?
Sorry, yes, I am.
Okay, members of council, you know that you go to your meeting chat section, send an email when you'd like to ask questions. I want to remind you to mute your microphones when you're not speaking. And Councillor Joe Neal, you have the floor, so please ask your questions to Dr. Kyle.
Thank you. My question is, what is the procedure right now if someone has a test for COVID and it's a negative result? I got a call, you may recall our conversation, I think about a week ago, where there was somebody quite upset that was waiting for the results, which I think ended up proving to be negative, but they were waiting for that. So what's the current process for anybody that has a negative result? I understand that if it's a positive result, obviously you're probably contacted right away. So can you please explain that?
Yes. In general, most of the tests outside of Lakeridge Health are being done at the Public Health Ontario laboratory. We have been receiving positive and negative results from the lab, and we then pass that information on to cases and contacts. Lakeridge Health has been sending their tests to a private laboratory, and we have been working closely with Lakeridge Health to have them fax to us both positive and negative results. Up until, I'm going to say, mid to late last week, we didn't know that they were not submitting their samples to the Public Health Laboratory, and they were not routinely sending negative results to us. We have resolved that problem to the best of my knowledge. So on a go-forward basis, at our end, we will be notifying cases and contacts as to their test results.
Just if I could follow up, so if a negative result is obviously that's a good thing. To your knowledge, what's the time lag between the time they take the test and when they receive a phone call that it's in fact a negative result? Thanks.
So I believe the turnaround time for test results to be communicated to us is in the order of maybe 2 to 3 days. And once we receive results, then our staff are on top of them. It depends on their say, job status, for example, healthcare worker versus other, as to where they fit in the queue. So there is a triaging that occurs at our end. But in rough terms, you're talking maybe a day or so turnaround time once we get the results. So it takes a few days for the submission to go to the lab, for the lab to do their test, for the lab to report back to, in Durham's case, Lake Ridge Health, because most of the testing is occurring at their assessment centers, and then another day or so for us to report out.
Yeah, and just one last question, Mr. Chair. Through you to Dr. Kyle, so what are you seeing in terms of the curve in Durham? Is it flattening or ramping up? What's your overall impression?
So I would urge members of council to go to durham.ca/COVID cases. I would say that the curve is flattening somewhat, but don't take my word for it. You can see on our dashboard the number of cases by date of reporting and date of onset, and the rapid increase that we saw maybe a week or two ago is slowing down. It's still increasing, but it's not increasing as fast as it was. Bearing in mind that you have to take into account these are, for the most part, confirmed cases. So what you see on graphs, in part, is related to the building up of test capacity and other factors other than the number of persons who are becoming infected. So you just have to bear that in mind. And there may be narrative around that on durham.ca/COVID cases. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Next is Councillor John Neal.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Dr. Kyle. Group homes throughout the residential neighborhood in Oshawa, etc. How are they being looked after in regard to the COVID-19 right now?
So I can't comment on a specific home. What I can tell you is the Ministry of Health has been releasing COVID protective measures guidelines continually. I'm going by memory, but I believe there is a set of guidelines with respect to preventing COVID-19 in group homes. We don't have a particular role in terms of helping group homes or other settings, for that matter, outside of long-term care homes and retirement homes in terms of how they manage things on the ground. But we would be linking to the ministry's website with respect to guidelines. And if a particular group home had any inquiries of us, probably more from a scientific perspective, we of course would answer their questions. So I think that's probably the best answer I can give you at this point in time.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Kyle. And through you, Mr. Chair, one more. Hillsdale Terraces, are they doing anything different as of today or tomorrow? Or I guess that would be for basically, I guess, the social services end of it. But I thought I'd ask that today. And are personal support workers being kept at one facility?
So I can start and then turn it over to Stella or Laura if she's on the phone. So there have been extensive additional measures put in place to control the outbreak at long-term care homes, including Hillsdale Terraces. There are well-known outbreak management protocols that were put in place prior to the outbreak being determined to be COVID-19. But the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Long-Term Care have put in a series of extraordinary guidelines and requirements, not only with respect to Hillsdale Terraces, but all homes and retirement homes in outbreak. And we would, of course, assist Hillsdale Terraces and the other long-term care homes and retirement homes that are in outbreak due to COVID-19. I think I'll stop there, Chair, and if I may turn it over to Social Services for additional comments. Thanks.
Good morning. As of March the 31st, we started active screening all of our staff as they entered and exited the building, and that included temperature checks. And we also started actively screening our residents daily, twice a day, with temperature checks as well. And any new admissions at that time were isolated for 14 days. In addition to that, we do follow protocol as we do for any other outbreak. Also, as soon as we're able to have a positive test done with our residents, more recently we've been trying to cohort them into a particular area, so we try to keep like residents together and healthy asymptomatic ones separate from them.
Okay, thank you. And the personal support workers, are they just going to be at one facility, or do they?
Yes, we started restricting staff as of March the 19th to one healthcare facility. So they're able to select where they want to work, and they need to stay put and not work anywhere else.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Dr. Kyle.
Councillor Brenner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you to Dr. Kyle. Dr. Kyle, are there any, or are you looking at putting in place any type of satellite testing facilities over in the western part of Durham region, specifically in the city of Pickering? It's a question that many of the residents have been asking through emails to me, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on it and what your strategy is regarding it.
So I didn't quite get, you said STATA testing?
No, any type of satellite testing facility.
Yeah, so Lake Ridge Health is mandated to set up assessment centers. The closest would be a assessment center that has been set up at the Lake Ridge Health Ajax and Pickering site. As you know, there is a whole bunch of logistical issues related to setting up assessment sites. Not only are there human resources issues, supply chain issues, and so forth and so on, but as well, you need to have a place that is properly equipped, because you're assessing individuals who have or may have COVID-19, so extensive PPE needs to be in place and so forth. We have provided support to Lake Ridge Health, who really have been mandated by the Ministry of Health and Ontario Health to set up the assessment piece. We are a prime referral source to the assessment centers at both Lake Ridge Health Oshawa and Lake Ridge Health Ajax in Pickering. But if you have any questions about the Ajax Pickering operation, I'm not on the ground. Offline, if you want to send me a note, I'd be happy to pass it on to Lake Ridge Health leadership if you want to leverage my connections to them. I'm not aware of there being any plans in place at this point in time to expand beyond those two sites, but I'm not at the Lake Ridge Health leadership table.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you and good morning. To Dr. Kyle, thanks Dr. Kyle for the update. I just got some information yesterday from Sandy Struna of your department regarding the migrant workers and that are coming into Durham. And I just wondered if you're if you could update us on how many have come in or how many you expect, and if you're getting cooperation from their employers rather, in terms of how they should be handled once they're in Canada.
Thanks for the question. Yes, temporary foreign workers are returning to Canada. Unfortunately, as of right now, I'm not on top of this file. Back to my team and report out. I'd be happy to do so. The issue here is that subject to mandatory isolation or quarantine at the federal level. However, a duty to inspect the home work in agriculture. But I would have to take this back to my team and report out if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you for that. And I had some concern expressed to me, and certainly the reply we got yesterday from Cindy Struna was very helpful, and I just thought I'd ask for a bit of an update. But thank you for the information, and I look forward to receiving some more. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Good morning, Chair. My question is to, I believe, Dr. Kyle. I asked Dr. Kyle earlier that I've had complained that folks who think they might have symptoms of COVID-19 are having a difficulty getting through on the hotline. I don't know if that has been rectified yet, because these folks are going to end up at the hospital or at the clinic in a waiting room, which wouldn't be ideal. So I'm just wondering, that's my first question, if we have rectified that problem. My second question is, we have a number of PSWs that works from home to home to home. How we look at that, or look at ways that we could mitigate that and making sure that folks are working, staying in one home? I believe Councillor Neal touched on that earlier. And my third question is, at Hillsdale, were you able to determine the source of the infection in that institution, whether it was via visits from the public, or was it a staff member that came from? Thank you.
So on the first question, thank you. What I would say is, hopefully we are turning this around. In public health, for the most part, virtually all of our staff are devoted to case and contact management. So we try to turn phone calls around as quickly as possible. We are transitioning from working at 605 to working from home. So we are working through teleworking, and by the end of next week, we hope that all of our callers, or at least most of them, will be working from home. So whether that is causing a certain amount of delay at this point in time as we're transitioning to teleworking, I don't know, but I'm not aware of days, it taking days for us to return calls, but I do know we get hundreds of calls a day. With respect to personal service workers working in more than one setting, If you're talking about facilities, then I think the guidelines that I've seen are fairly clear, and I think you heard from the Commissioner of Social Services that many are requiring their workers to choose one place and not work at multiple sites. I don't think public health has a role, if you will, in policing that, apart from playing a role in amplifying guidance in this regard. And I can't comment at all in terms of home and community care. That is an Ontario Health / LHIN issue, but I'm sure that they're on it in terms of at least guidance with respect to PSWs who work at more than one home, but I really can't comment further on that. On your last question, I'm not sure that we will ever find a source for COVID-19 in Hillsdale Terraces. And from a public health perspective, I'm sure, not that I'm sure, from a public health perspective, what our prime focus is, as is the home, is to stop the outbreak from spreading rather than figuring out how it came in. Having said that, regardless of how it came in, as you heard, there are extensive guidelines.
Dr. Kyle, we've lost you. Members of council, you can still hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll hope that Dr. Kyle will come back on the line. Are you there? Okay, I recognize there's two more members of council that have questions for Dr. Kyle. What we'll do is we'll move on to the Commissioners of Social Service and Finance, and hopefully Dr. Kyle will come back onto the line and we can get to Councillor Kerr, Mayor Foster, and anyone else who has questions. Commissioners, are you ready to start your presentation?
Yes, I am.
And who is taking the lead?
Stella Danos Papaconstantino.
Okay, please go ahead, Stella.
Good morning. I appreciate this opportunity to provide a high-level overview of the Social Services Department's response to COVID-19. The Social Services Department established the Department Emergency Operations Center on March 17th and have been meeting daily to plan and implement. Please change the slide. Okay. Staff efforts have taken place over the last few weeks to ensure ongoing support and service to our residents. We continue to administer vital services such as Ontario Works applications, case management, essential supports and outreach, along with Housing Services Administration and the operations of our 4 long-term care homes. Next slide. Both the federal and provincial government are responding to COVID-19 by making funding available to those impacted through job loss, the working poor, and those currently on financial assistance. The funding made available to the Social Services Department will be administered by the Housing Services and Income and Employment Division. The region has received $1.86 million in additional federal Reaching Home funding to support people experiencing homelessness. The funding will be used for a variety of needs, such as purchasing beds and physical barriers for social distancing and securing accommodation to reduce overcrowding in shelters. An additional $2.83 million Social Service Relief Fund under the Provincial Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative, known as CHIPPE, will help housing services support community agencies in areas of shelters, food banks, emergency services, community and supportive housing providers to continue to deliver their critical services, hire additional staff, and find ways to promote social distancing and self-isolation to keep people safe and healthy. Emergency assistance is available to anyone awaiting employment insurance and or Canada Emergency Response Benefit and or find themselves in a crisis situation due to COVID-19. This program has expanded from 2 weeks to 48 days. In addition, for individuals in receipt of Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Pension experiencing COVID-19 hardship, the province has expanded discretionary funding to allow more for COVID-19 related expenses. This includes a case-by-case assessment to determine eligibility. Next slide, please. The Regional Municipality of Durham is offering emergency childcare for children 0 to 12 to eligible healthcare and frontline workers at no cost. While we know that the safest place for children is in the home, the region's early childhood educators are offering essential services workers the opportunity to stay on the job. There are now 5 emergency childcare centers open, allowing for 24/7 operations. Locations of these centers are Ajax, Oshawa, Pickering, Clarington, and Whitby. Recognizing a need in the north, staff has secured a location in Uxbridge. This site is currently being finalized and will bring the total of available childcare spaces to 112. Currently, we have 83 children registered. The Region of Durham also has service agreements with licensed home childcare agencies that have not been closed under the provincial health order, and they are still offering care. Next slide, please. The Durham Advisory Committee on Homelessness has been called on to act as the COVID-19 Homelessness Response Network to assist with planning, operationalizing, and assessing the homelessness response. They meet weekly, Mondays from 1 to 3, and the minutes will be posted on durham.ca. The committee is also being consulted for the administration of COVID-19 funding targeted to support the Homelessness Response Framework. The Homelessness Response Framework has been developed and includes 4 priorities. Number 1, emergency shelter response. This ensures that procedures and resources are implemented to safely support healthy, asymptomatic homeless residents, symptomatic homeless residents, homeless residents pending COVID-19 results, and homeless residents that have tested positive. In addition to supporting the operations of emergency shelters and overnight warming centers, hotel partnerships have been secured to provide enhanced social distancing accommodations for at-risk shelter clients. For individuals testing positive for COVID-19, Camp Samak has been secured as a recovery isolation space. Currently, we're using a hotel partnership until Camp Samak is operationalized. Second priority, the unsheltered residents response is intended to minimize the spread of COVID-19 and support unsheltered residents. Access to essential services such as washrooms and shower facilities, outreach help, access to health supports and harm reduction efforts at centralized locations and throughout street outreach initiatives. Durham Region's Housing Services is working with municipal partners and community agencies to achieve this. Oshawa, we have the backdoor mission has been identified as the most accessible spot for a service hub. Its location has access to washroom and shower facilities and operationalizing health supports to be on site as well. Portable washroom facilities and hand washing stations are also being installed at the refuge in Oshawa. Pickering has identified the Dunbarton Indoor Pool as the best location to open access to washroom and shower facilities for unsheltered residents in Pickering. Ajax has identified the Ajax Community Center as the best location to open access to washroom, shower facilities for unsheltered residents in Ajax. In Whitby, we have fewer unsheltered residents, and we're working on a different plan, which includes hand washing facilities and washrooms at a location. And we are reaching out to our other municipal partners to coordinate services based on local needs. The third priority is the COVID-19 relief response. The purpose of this is to allocate additional funding to supplement the Housing Stability Program to respond to the anticipated increase in need for rental and utility arrears. And the fourth priority, the homelessness support providers personal protection equipment response. The focus is on coordinating and distributing bulk PPE orders for homelessness support agencies in Durham. Next slide, please. Working closely with the Region's Health Department and the Ministry of Health, the Long-Term Care Division has instituted protocols, active screening, and personal protective equipment for the protection of both residents and staff. To date, one of our 4 long-term care homes has unfortunately experienced 7 deaths of residents due to COVID-19. Extreme measures continue in order to manage and protect our most vulnerable. With an increase of swabbing that is taking place in the homes, that means swabbing every symptomatic resident and staff. We have a total of 33 residents that have tested positive to date, and 10 staff. All symptomatic residents are restricted to the rooms except for meal times, and all symptomatic staff are working off-site and are at home isolating. We also have staff wearing masks at our COVID outbreak homes and full PPE when they're interacting with symptomatic residents. Rapid legislation changes, protocols, and responding to resident, family, and staffing needs has been an ongoing focus for our long-term care team. Next slide. The Family Services Division staff have been providing accessible and responsive counseling and mental health supports during the COVID-19 pandemic to employees and community members. In addition, these staff are developing COVID-19 online resources for both employees and community members to help manage the stress and use positive coping strategies. Modifications are being implemented for the Partner Assault Response Program to ensure needed support and safety for both clients and their partners. And the Adult Community Support Services is providing telephone outreach and case management for vulnerable adults with intellectual disabilities living on their own. Next slide, please. The coordination and support is provided to our community leaders for food security. Feed the Need is leading our Durham region food distribution, and Durham is currently in a stable position for food supply. Feed the Need is the distribution center for over 40 food banks in Durham region. Feed the Need is a member of Feed Ontario, the provincial association which is connected to Food Banks Canada. Feed Ontario is receiving government funding in response to the anticipated need for food in our communities. Ongoing assessment is provided to determine the regional funding that will be required to sustain food distribution. Also, staff have established a COVID-19 community response page that is updated daily. Here the community can find information on financial assistance, food banks, community supports, and much more. Staff are also establishing mechanisms for conducting community wellness checks on our vulnerable and isolated residents. I would like to take the time to acknowledge the staff in the Social Services Department for the incredible work that they're doing during these very unprecedented times. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, questions? Dr. Kyle is also on the line, so if you'd like to ask Dr. Kyle first. Councillor Kerr? Any other questions to the Commissioner? Hearing none, I will move on to the Commissioner of Finance, please.
Thank you. It's Nancy Taylor, Commissioner of Finance. I have just some very high-level comments with respect to the report because it is quite detailed with respect to the property tax issue that was asked of us. As noted in the report, the responsibility for tax billing, tax collection, and tax write-offs are the responsibility of the local municipal level, and they have very limited allowable scenarios within which to do that. In conjunction, as a result of that, I am meeting weekly with the area treasurers via Teams, as well as weekly with the Ontario Regional and Single Tier Treasurers Group. And the purpose of those are to consult and collaborate positively to figure out problems and solutions to provide consistency to taxpayers so that if they have properties in multiple locations, they understand what's going on. And so that approach has been quite successful, and those conference calls, particularly with the area treasurers, are very well received, I think, amongst all area treasurers. Stemming from those discussions, and each of you at your local municipal councils would have addressed this through approvals or through delegations, interest is not being charged for May and June at this point in time, so there's a 60-day grace period, if you will, for any taxation payments, as well as water billing for that matter. So at this point, that results in no immediate negative impact whatsoever to taxpayers from a timing perspective, and now that would allow us opportunities and time to research as time goes on the implications of what's happening. We do need time to assess the effectiveness of the provincial and federal programs. As you note, there are daily announcements being made there, and determining how those are going to affect people once they all come into play will have a great bearing on any decisions this council might wish to make in the future. Some observations is local strategies will shift burdens locally, so we need to keep that in mind. And the other point to note here with respect to those provincial and federal programs is the work of the Economic Development Department is critical here in assisting businesses to maximize every opportunity. So I'm very grateful for the extent of work that's undertaking at that stage, and through Stella's team accessing from an individual perspective all of those supports. The report does speak to specific observations on various components of the Municipal Act, so I won't repeat them here. Your local tax collectors and treasurers have a wealth of knowledge on that basis. Just as a high-level observation, any kinds of programs of these nature are extremely difficult to administer, even under normal circumstances. But under the circumstances we're facing with the public not being able to come into our municipal buildings, that would make these kinds of programs even more complex to try to sort out. And as each of you would be aware from your own local perspectives, cash flow implications of this sort of thing. So I guess my message there is none of the tools fit very well under this particular scenario. Our recommendation is to continue to work with area treasurers to assess impacts and what opportunities we may have going forward, particularly because of that the grace period that's in place. That gives us time and opportunity to determine where we need to go from here. And as noted in the Commissioner of Social Services presentation, the region's significant role here is essential services, and that's our main focus during this crisis. So we need to allow the federal and provincial income programs time to take effect, and then through social services determine the critical needs and support those needs. And that's really a huge focus of where we'd like our resources to go. And just as a final observation, don't forget there are Ontario property tax credits through income taxes that are there to provide relief, and those will continue to take place because that's an embedded part of our income tax system through the province. Those are my thoughts and observations, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is from Councillor Kerr to the Commissioner of Health and Social Services. Stella, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
So Councillor Kerr is communicating via email. So has there been any connection with the downtown Oshawa Hotel to provide for housing for 10 to 15 of Oshawa's homeless?
Coming with an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, through the chair, we are using a downtown Oshawa Hotel to support asymptomatic clients, homeless clients.
Thank you. Second question. Can a downtown hotel shelter location be maintained even after Camp Samak Hub has been opened?
We are still to determine that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brenner, questions for, I believe, the Commissioner of Finance?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the Commissioner. You outlined about the work of the lower tier municipalities and also referenced the deferral program for interest during May and June. I'm wondering if you are considering looking at a further program which would be consistent with some of the lower tier municipalities which currently provide a tax grant through a write-off. For example, Whitby is $400, City of Pickering $375 at the local level for persons that are vulnerable, seniors, and persons with disabilities to get them through the crises. I know that their incomes are not reduced. However, clearly they are already under a lot of stress, and can the region now be looking at where those municipalities do have a grant program to include the regional part of it as well?
Thank you for the question. If I may, that question comes to us every year through our property tax strategy report. And the answer really is historically the region has not participated in individualized local municipal tax programs. If they're not uniformly adopted across all lower tiers, essentially what the region is doing is cross-subsidizing. So essentially we collect, as you know, regional taxes from all regional taxpayers, and if we're matching a program that only is occurring in one local, then we are taking funds from one municipality and subsidizing another. So that's our reasoning for only matching programs that are universal across the locals, so that there is that fairness amongst the locals over where their regional tax dollars are going. So the deferral program really is the most efficient way at this stage of assisting, because by virtue of the deferral program, we are easing any time-related issues at this point in time. The other thing I would note is, with respect to the locals deferring those and not charging interest in May and June, the region has partnered with all the locals in when the remittances would come to the region for the region's share of the levy. So for those of you that may be familiar, typically we get funds from the locals 7 days after your installment due date. So essentially 4 times a year, the region gets their levy that's been approved. What we have worked out with the locals is that 7 days after your due dates, we would only get what you have physically collected. So that then reduces that cash flow burden on the locals to fund the entire upper tier quarter each installment. So that's a result of those weekly discussions in order to assist the locals in their cash flow and that those implications across the local municipalities.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Pickles?
Thank you, Chair Henry. I note that the CAO referenced that the lower tier CAOs are coordinating with respect to tax deferrals and waiving of penalties and grace periods and all that. And I don't want any specific details on this matter, but are they also coordinating or at least discussing amongst each other retaining employees and paying employees and part-time employees and issues like that, where we may be dealing with the same unions and same issues across the region? I don't want any details as to what implications are. I just wonder if there's an attempt to try and coordinate that.
Okay, I'll ask the CAO to respond. Please, Elaine.
Thank you. I can tell you that the CAOs regularly discuss their hiring strategy in this situation. It is an issue that's common across the lower tier and with less of an impact on the upper tier given the nature of services. With respect to and so they are sharing strategies and approaches to the union on a regular basis, and I am on those calls. As I mentioned earlier, we talk twice a week. With respect to the tax deferrals, Nancy has been leading this discussion with her colleague treasurers in the lower tier.
So thank you. Just to follow up on that, I guess it's not so much hiring; it's maybe retaining or layoffs or paying employees. Again, I don't want to get into the details, but they are discussing those issues.
The issues that have been discussed is how long staff that are no longer working right now can be paid for, whether or not to go to layoffs, and whether or not staff can be redeployed to other duties during this time. So they cover the whole gamut. There's not a consistent treatment across the board, but they certainly all share their strategies and the pros and cons of each strategy.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Thank you.
So members of council, are there any further questions on the presentations? Seeing none, we'll move on to the first item in our agenda, which is item 4.1. It's located on page 3, Assistance to Durham Region Community during the COVID-19 crisis. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move it.
I'll second it, John. Dave.
Okay, moved by Councillor Carter, seconded by, Mayor Carter, seconded by Mayor Burton. Okay, the item is now on the floor. Members of council.
I had an amendment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Neal, your amendment.
Okay, so it was distributed, I think, to everyone last night. So it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor John Neal. Be it resolved that item 4.1 be amended by inserting a subsection D as follows, which would read that the region of Durham pass a bylaw that will cancel, reduce, or refund taxes where a lower tier municipality has done so for residential taxpayers whose taxes have become unduly burdensome as a result of the COVID emergency pursuant to Section 365 of the Municipal Act. So I wish to speak to it first of all.
Okay, so it's moved in second. Councillor Neal, I think members of council have it. I'm going to rule your item out of order for the following reasons. One, in my opinion, and I've referred and checked with the clerk, this would be a reconsideration of this year's budget. That would take 2/3 to do that. The other part too is by doing that, both the mover and the seconder voted against the budget, which would allow you not to reintroduce the item.
I'll look for someone else to move it then, but I don't think it's a reconsideration of the budget. So.
Well, that's my ruling. You can feel free to challenge the chair if you want.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to move that item. I did support the budget.
The chair's been challenged. The vote has been called.
I'll withdraw the challenge then, if Councillor Brenner's prepared to move it. I don't agree with the ruling, but if someone else is prepared to move it, that's fine.
There's a challenge on the floor, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay, I'll ask for a recorded vote on the challenge.
Recorded vote on the challenge to the chair, and I'm going to have the clerk to tell you how to, which way to vote, so you know what you're doing. If you, Mr. Clerk.
So the question before you, members, is shall the ruling of the chair be upheld? If you're supporting the ruling, you would vote yes. If you're opposed to the ruling, you would vote no. Anderson.
No.
Ash.
Yes.
Barton.
Yes.
Rathhaden.
Yes.
Brenner.
No.
Carter.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Collier.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Dyes.
Yes.
Drew.
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
Hyatt.
Yes.
Kerr. Councillor Kerr, can you indicate by the chat?
Yes.
Okay, I'm advised by the Deputy Clerk that Councillor Kerr is voting yes. Leahy.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Miriam Pietri.
Yes.
McLean.
Yes.
Mitchell.
No.
Mulcahy.
Yes.
John Neal.
No.
Joe Neal.
No.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Pickles.
Yes.
Roy. I believe she's absent from the meeting. Smith.
Yes.
Watton.
Yes.
Yamada.
Yes.
Chair Henry.
Yes.
The ruling's been upheld.
So that has been upheld. Members of council, I'll call for the vote on the recommendation to council.
I thought there was, Mr. Chair, I thought there was a mover prepared to move it. So I don't understand why this approach is being taken, but
yeah, my ruling is
accounts.
Sorry, my ruling
right,
is that it's out of order, Councillor Neal.
Because it was moved by myself, who I guess I'm not allowed to move any financial matters from this point forward, is I guess my interpretation of your ruling. But I thought a councillor was prepared to move it and put it on the floor.
No.
So is that councillor's? Pardon me?
Sorry, 1 second, please.
That's right.
I've ruled it out of order.
Well, I thought you ruled it because I was the mover of this.
Yeah, I'll have the clerk respond.
If another councillor is prepared to move it, is it not in order to move an amendment?
Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, the chair ruled the motion out of order because the amendment, sorry, in that it was a reopening. There was a second issue that Councillor Neal did not vote on the prevailing side, but the key point here is that it was ruled out of order. There was a challenge to the ruling of the chair. The chair's ruling has been upheld, so therefore the motion is no longer in play.
So are you saying that nobody can amend this recommendation? Like there's no amendments allowed?
There could be other amendments. We'd have to see them on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, there could be other amendments. It would be on a case-by-case basis. I have ruled this one out of order.
Just so I understand though, is it because I moved it or because of the nature of the amendment? Can you please clarify that?
No, it's due to the procedure rules, and I explained those in the beginning. In my interpretation of your motion, it's a reopening of the budget, which would take 2/3, and the double negative.
Well, how is this not a reopening of the budget? What's on the table right here? Like, how is that not? How is the balance of the motion that's on the table not a reopening then of the budget?
Because there is no recommendation to do that. Within that is the information collected by our staff in items A, B, and C. So the recommendation to council is before you. There's no difference there. What your motion was trying to do was change our process and how we've already set the tax rates in the municipalities. It would take a reconsideration. So, Councillor Neal, we'll just move on, please. On the item before you.
I think the taxpayers are losing out here. That's all. Thanks.
The chair's ruled.
You know, Councillor Neal, I appreciate your comments. I'm in the chair. I've made my comments.
Yeah.
I think the taxpayers of Canada are now seeing both levels of government come to the table with some amazing things, and we need to work through this to see what else is coming. And we are dealing with some very interesting challenges with here in the region. So I do not agree with what you've just said. That will be your opinion. My opinion's different. The issue is over. I'll call for the vote on the item. And we'll do a recorded vote. Mr. Clerk, please.
Anderson.
Yes.
Ash.
Yes.
Barton.
Yes.
Beth Haddon.
Yes.
Brenner.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Collier.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Dyes.
Yes.
Drew.
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
Hyatt.
Yes.
Kerr. Kerr votes yes. Leahy.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Miriam Pietri.
Yes.
McLean.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mulcahy.
Yes.
John Neal.
Yes.
Joe Neal.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Pickles.
Yes.
Roy. I believe she's left the meeting. Smith.
Yes.
Watton.
Yes.
Yamada.
Yes.
Regional Chair Henry.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Members of council, we'll move on to item 4.2, delegation of limited consent granting authority to the Commissioner of Planning and Economic Development in response to COVID-19. Members of council, this will take unanimous consent, so we'll call for a recorded vote.
I have a question, John Neal.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Neal? Well,
So, in other
sorry,
words,
just give me 1 second, please.
Yep.
Yes, it's Brian Bridgman here. What's the question?
Oh, sorry, no, wait 1 second, please. I need to get this on the floor first, so can I get a mover and a seconder for the unanimous consent?
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Councillor.
happy to second it.
Councillor Miriam Pietri, and was that you, Mayor Collier? Who was the seconder?
No, I'm happy to second it, Councillor Leahy.
Councillor Leahy. Thank you. Okay. All right. Councillor Neal, you have a question for Mr. Bridgman? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I apologize. I have to call the vote on the unanimous consent. Mr. Clerk?
Anderson.
Yes.
Ash.
Yes.
Barton.
Yes.
Beth Haddon.
Yes.
Brenner.
Yes.
Chapman. I'm sorry, Carter.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Collier.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Dyes.
Yes.
Drew.
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
Hyatt.
Yes.
Kerr. Kerr is yes. Leahy.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Marin Pietri.
Yes.
McLean.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Yes.
Mulcahy. John Neal.
Yes.
Joe Neal. Joe Neal. Councillor Joe Neal. Take that as an absent. Nicholson.
Yes.
Bickles.
Yes.
Roy. Not present. Smith.
Yes.
Watton.
Yes.
Yamada.
Yes.
Regional Chair Henry.
Yes.
Got unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent. Councillor John Neal, you have a question to Mr. Bridgman?
Yeah, see, Mr. Chair, to the Commissioner. Public meetings, etc. Will that be like if it's in regards to anything to do with the Planning Act? From my understanding, that's just going to be they're going to be deferred.
Through the chair, it's Brian Bridgman here, we are working on solutions to having public meetings. Right now, they're all on hold, but with regard to whether it be these consent matters or even Planning Act matters on some of the things that are in the queue right now, we're looking at solutions to have those meetings as soon as we can.
So if there, through you, Mr. Chair, to the Commissioner, follow up. So if there is a need for a public meeting on something, that still has to take place before anything is automatically approved by staff under this direction and bylaw. Am I correct in saying that, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to clarify, to enact the delegated authority, what we propose to have happen is to send out notice to all the people that we would normally send to and invite them to comment whether or not they have a concern. If there are no concerns, then the authority could fall to me to approve it based on the criteria that was set out. If it's simple, it's straightforward, it's non-controversial, if the area municipality has also expressed support, then that would be done without there being a formal public meeting.
So through the chair, and how would that, and that's going to be sent out on the website to the residents, or are you just going to send a letter out, or how's that going to be communicated to the general public?
We'll be sending letters out next week, and then we'll also put something on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions to Mr. Bridgman?
Mr. Chair, Adrian here. I've got one.
Please go ahead, Mayor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bridgman, so on the same topic, in Clarington anyway, we are somewhat, I'm going to say, concerned or in anticipation of changes from the province in terms of what will constitute a public meeting or not. I know there are a number of rumors going around, so two questions. One would be, can you confirm or deny that that the province is looking at providing clarity? And secondly, could you take direction, or Mr. Chair, perhaps yourself, to write a letter to the province requesting clarity, if you don't think that that's coming anytime soon?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I was expecting some clarity based on a conversation I had with an assistant deputy minister at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. While there was not specific confirmation given, I took it from the answer that something would be forthcoming. But we could certainly write, or we could help draft something for the chair if that would be appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Bridgen, Mr. Chair. I don't think it'll hurt, and I'm guessing that it is based on that and what I'm hearing. Thank you very much.
And Mayor Foss, just members of council, I will take that as just direction, and we'll work on and send that letter out. Okay, members of council, any other wishing to speak to this item? So if we could get a mover for the item.
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
Was that Councillor Anderson or Councillor Miriam Pietri that moved it?
Miriam Pietri.
Thank you, Tito.
Miriam Pietri.
Thank you. And Councillor Chapman, were you the seconder?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. On the item, I will call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
I'm only concerned about no. Anybody in opposition? Hearing none, that carries. Members of council, item 4.3 is to refer to the addendum to consider the CIP report 2020 info 28 pulled by Mayor Collier. We will need to, this will require unanimous consent to be considered. I'll need a mover and a seconder for consent. Okay. Moved by Mayor Collier.
I second.
Crawford to second.
Okay, and I think Councillor Anderson was first, so seconded by Councillor Anderson. I'll have the clerk do the vote, please.
Anderson.
Yes.
Members, please mute.
Please put your. Okay. Members of council, somebody has something going on. Could you please put your phones on mute and only respond when the vote is called? Mr. Clerk?
We'll restart. Councillor Anderson.
Yes.
Councillor Ash.
Yes.
Councillor Barton.
Yes.
Councillor Beth Haddon.
Yes.
Councillor Brenner.
Yes.
Councillor Carter.
Yes.
Councillor Chapman.
Yes.
Councillor Collier.
Yeah.
Councillor Crawford.
Yes.
Councillor Dyes.
Yes.
Councillor Drew.
Yes.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Councillor Hyatt.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr. Votes yes. Councillor Leahy.
Yes.
Councillor Lee.
Yes.
Councillor Miriam Pietri.
Yes.
Councillor McLean.
Yes.
Councillor Mitchell.
Yes.
Councillor Mulcahy.
Yes.
Councillor John Neal.
Yes.
Councillor Joe Neal.
Yes.
Councillor Nicholson.
Yes.
Councillor Pickles.
Yes.
Councillor Roy. Not present. Councillor Smith.
Yes.
Councillor Watton.
Yes.
Councillor Yamada,
Yes.
Regional Chair Henry.
Yes. Okay, that is unanimous. 1 second, please.
So we need a mover and a seconder to proceed for
Members of council, just give us 1 minute, please. Sorry, members of council, just there's many moving pieces here. Mayor Collier, are you moving the receive for information, and then, and do you have a seconder?
Chair, I wish to move an amendment moved by myself, second by Councillor Dye.
Well, let's get the item on the floor, so we need someone to remove.
I will move it on the floor as long as it doesn't restrict moving the amendment, Chair.
Check with the clerk. I don't believe it will. So so the item, which is the Commissioner Planning and Economic 2020 Info 28 report, is moved by Mayor Collier, seconded by
Councillor Lee.
I think Mayor Collier, did you say Councillor Crawford or Councillor Dice?
No, Councillor Dice is seconding
For the amendment.
Okay.
I just don't want to move a receive for information if it limits amending the report.
It doesn't. So it's moved by yourself, seconded by Councillor Dice. So now the item is on the floor. Mayor Collier, you have an amendment?
I do, Chair, and I solicit to the clerk. I'll just read it quickly. It's not long. And then I'll speak to it. Amendment to 2020 Info 28, which is to deal with the Carruthers Creek Watershed Plan update. Number 1, that the public comment period for the Carruthers Creek Watershed Plan update be paused until the COVID-19 emergency state is lifted by all levels of government, at which time the public comment period would restart. 2, that an in-person public open house be rescheduled once the emergency state is lifted by all levels of government to ensure proper due process and meaningful consultation. And 3, that the public be provided a minimum of 3 weeks notification of an in-person public open house and a minimum of 6 weeks after the public open house meeting to provide written comments, consistent with the pre-COVID-19 timing. And I'll just speak to it very quickly.
Before you do that, the amendment's moved by you, seconded by Councillor Lee?
No, Councillor Dice.
Councillor Dice, okay. So the amendment is on the floor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. For those that are new this term, this is a process that was started many years ago. The Region Commission TRCA to perform this, and to have it come out, it came out on March 16th, was the first week of the COVID-19 crisis. This is such an important piece of, such an important document that has broad effects and very, very large financial effects to the town of Ajax as far as flooding concerns, that I just feel I don't want it to be, it has to go through a very thorough and meaningful public process. So to have a, right now when we can't have public gatherings, and to postpone it a little bit is one thing, but this is a 90-day consultation period. And what this amendment will do is simply halt that for now. And basically, once everything is lifted, start it back up again so it can go through the proper, fulsome consultation period. And that's all I'll say. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So anyone wishing to speak to the amendment? Hearing no members.
I do.
Okay, sorry.
Dave Pickles here too.
Okay, so, all right, remember, members of council, you need to communicate through the meeting chat portion so I can identify you. I will start with Councillor Pickles. Councillor Pickles?
Yes, sorry, I was just typing on the chat line. On the amendment, could we hear from Commissioner Bridgman on what comments or any concerns or support he may have for the amendment?
Okay. Commissioner?
Okay, thank you. It's Brian Bridgman here through you, Mr. Chair. A few things. As a starting comment, I can assure you that it's certainly our intent to have a full and open and transparent process and to ensure that the public has ample opportunity to comment and be heard in this matter. Just to recap, the draft watershed document was posted on March the 16th for a 90-day comment period, which takes us to June the 16th. And you'll see that what this information report did was to notify that the public open house, which was scheduled for April the 13th, is going to be, or has been postponed. And we specifically didn't extend the comment period, even though we knew it would probably have to be extended, just because the situation is fluid and we didn't really know what the right end date would be. But you know, for all intents and purposes, the process is largely paused, and we understand that. And we will revisit the comment deadline in early June, and then make whatever arrangements are appropriate at that time, or at least that was the plan. With regard to the public open house, I'll tell you what our thinking there is. I think if I understand Mayor Collier's comment or suggestion properly, he wants to make sure there is an open house that the public can come to comment on this. And I just indicate to you that while that would ordinarily have been our approach, again, we're in a different environment and we don't really know right now what the public's appetite is going to be for coming together in a big room to have a public open house. So we're again waiting to see how all that shakes out, and it may be some hybrid of some electronic participation option as well as maybe something in the public. But to be honest with you, we don't know how that's going to work. But that's where I come back to saying it is definitely our interest and our commitment to make sure that there's a full, open, transparent process and to make sure the public has ample opportunity to comment. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
So thank you. And just as a follow-up then, so if I can be clear, without the amendment, the commissioner would plan to, depending on what the COVID restrictions, how long they go, the commissioner would plan to come back to council with some further measures as to how to conduct or defer the public participation. So this, without an amendment, it's going to come back to us for some further decisions.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is also the Commissioner. Councillor Collier quite rightly points out that we've been going on this for some time. My question to the Commissioner is in regards to the public process that has already happened, and that's in regards to the open houses that occurred in 2019. I believe it was the fall, one in Ajax and one in Pickering. I attended the one in Ajax. Could the Commissioner speak to the public process up to now? And I would like a recorded vote on this motion.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess my opening comment would be that the process to date, I think, has been extensive and open, and there has been opportunities at various milestones and stages where we've released draft documents, background technical studies, There was an extensive postcard campaign and online, working in conjunction with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, who are really doing the technical and all the legwork on this. So it's really been a joint effort in terms of posting all kinds of information on websites. And I don't have the specific dates with me in terms of when previous meetings and open houses were held, but we've met with individual landowners and anyone who was asked to meet. We've engaged Ajax and Pickering staff throughout the process, who in both municipalities have been informed and supportive of how the project has rolled out. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Ash.
That deals with my question.
Okay, I heard some other members of councils responded they wanted to speak. I haven't got any in the meeting chat group. Was there another member of council wishing to speak?
Councillor Dies.
Councillor Dice, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So, you know, I appreciate the work that's been done by Mr. Bridgman and TRCA. This has been a very contentious issue in Ajax because of the possibility of flooding. And we had huge engagement in Ajax over the years as this has been going through the process. But we're in unprecedented times now where our population here in Durham is very, very anxious about the COVID-19. Their head is not in the space to think about the report that's coming out of TRCA and Durham Region on the Carruthers Creek Watershed Plan. So what we're simply asking is waiting until such a time as it's safe to have a physical public meeting, which is what my constituents prefer actually, and I know that firsthand. When that time comes, then we can do what we need to do, have a presentation and get the input that we require. It's simply a pause in the process to allow people to get through what we're doing now with COVID-19, to get back to normal, to put their heads in a different space. And I think that is the expectation from people. And I think it's only fair that we do that because it's extremely important to the residents, particularly downstream of the watershed. We need to look at the flooding issues, and we know it's not just lake levels, but what comes down that creek is what goes into the lake. So there's all kinds of issues here, and people need to truly understand what the implications are and what the cost will be to our municipality if we have to mitigate that. So I don't hear that there's an issue in the pause, and I put that back to Mr. Bridgman. That has been my question all along, but I really feel that it's only fair that we do that. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Barton?
Yeah, I support every bit of the motion except for the in-person piece. You know, these are ever-changing times, and I'm just not certain when we'd be open to a in-person public meeting. Again, that's just my only concern. So if we take away the in-person and maybe change it to, you know, an agreed upon public, you know, agreed upon public input or something like that, I completely support this. I want a significant delay, but my only concern is when will we meet in person in large groups again? That's it. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Just give me 1 second. Next speaker is Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. To Mayor Barton's point, ultimately, though, is ultimately, you know, Ajax has a really engaged senior base, and not all of them are incredibly tech savvy. So to have strictly either a phone-in or a online open house would be excluding some of our most engaged residents. And I guess my question to the director is, have we ever had an electronic open house? What that would look like? And I understand these are changing times, but I do believe there are certain aspects that have to remain in person, or at least give the option for people to come in person.
Mr. Bridgman?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I think as we look across the province and see what our comparators and other municipalities are doing, I think there's becoming, even this council meeting, for example, more and more examples of how to have an effective and provide meaningful engagement. There's always been all kinds of webinars and things like that. I think it can be done. As I mentioned earlier, in relation to the land division matter, we're working on the details to have good and meaningful public input and public meetings. So I know that that's evolving rapidly as well. And of course, we'd make sure that happened.
Councillor Lee?
Thank you. That answers the question, but ultimately my statement still stands that I still think that in these ever-changing times, I mean, look at our regional council. We're the elected officials, and it took us 3 hours before we finally got our calls, on a pretty stable level. So I can only imagine the disruption of a video chat would have on some of our senior residents, and I just want to make sure that they don't get excluded from having their input put in. That is all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Mitchell?
Yeah, I guess I just don't understand why there's any hurry on this item in this circumstance, since things are being essentially shut down anyway, and it is a big item, so I would support the Ajax resolution.
Okay. Any other members of council wishing to speak to the amendment?
Can the amendment be read back?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, the amendment was sent to all of you, so you should be able to open it up. I will have the clerk read the amendment back.
So the amendment to the matter before you is an add-on. It is further recommended that 1, the public comment period for the Carruthers Creek Watershed Plan update be paused until the COVID-19 emergency state is lifted by all levels of government, at which time the public comment period would restart. And in-person public open house be rescheduled once the emergency state is lifted by all levels of government to ensure proper due process and meaningful consultation. And 3, the public be provided a minimum of 3 weeks notification of an in-person public open house and a minimum of 6 weeks after the public open house meeting to provide written comments consistent with the pre-COVID-19 timing.
Okay. Members of council?
Chair, Sean Collier here. I had asked to send a message to the clerk to be put on the speaker list.
I haven't got it yet, but Mayor Collier, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I appreciate Mayor Mitchell making his last comment, because that's exactly what I want to get back in and discuss. This is not something that I'm aware is being time sensitive, but it is very, very important. So, I mean, right now this came out on March the 16th, so we're less than 30 days into the consultation period. What the amendment suggests, giving 6 weeks after the public open house, we're still keeping the same timeline. All this is a pause to the process. Stop it right now, and we'll restart it again once the emergency state is lifted. I appreciate Councillor Lee bringing up the seniors portion as well. We have a fairly significant portion of the community, especially in Ajax, South Ajax, where this affects potentially, who are not real computer savvy. There are a lot of seniors there, and to exclude them at this point would I think be a real disservice. So I just wanted to also say thank you to everybody for agreeing to put this on today. It is very important. Thank you.
So, Councillor Ash, you asked for a recorded vote on the amendment?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no other members of council or seeing none on the meeting's chat portion of this meeting, I will ask the clerk to do the vote, please.
Anderson.
Yes.
Ash.
No.
Barton.
No.
Beth Haddon.
No.
Brenner.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Collier.
Yeah.
Crawford.
Yes.
Dyes.
Yes.
Drew.
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
Hyatt.
Yes.
Kerr is no. Leahy.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Maren Pietri.
Yes.
McLean.
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Mulcahy.
Yes.
John Neal.
Yes.
Joe Neal.
Yes.
Nicholson.
Yes.
Pickles.
No.
Roy. Not present. Smith.
Yes.
Watton.
Yes.
Yamada.
Yes.
Regional Chair Henry.
Yes. The amendment carries. The main motion as amended. Hearing no comments. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none opposed, that carries. Members of council, just before we go to bylaws, I really want to say thank you to all of you today. This is not an easy way to do a meeting, but I want to thank you for your patience and what you've done to staff in the room. I really want to say thank you. I especially want to say
questions, Mr. Chair.
this
I want
is
to direct some questions. At some point.
This special meeting was called. Councillor Neal, questions to who?
To the CAO.
Question to the CAO. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so are 100% of Durham Region staff still employed, still receiving full salary?
Yes, they are, and all staff are engaged and working.
Okay. Well, I guess, and for small business owners who, or restaurant workers or retail staff who are basically, you know, their income has been severely curtailed, do you think that they will be able to sustain themselves and pay the full regional taxes and their full share of municipal taxes, even though it's deferred, once they get to open back up again? Do you think they'll be able to sustain that?
I think economic development is working with my office as well as with the other orders of government on a recovery strategy. So there's no question there will be some assistance needed, but that should be a fully integrated package that involves all orders of government once we have a better sense of the true impact.
So I had a conversation yesterday with someone who's in the financial industry, has a lot of small businesses that he deals with on a regular basis, and I think the sense out there is that there's going to be a devastating impact, particularly, you know, like if you're, for example, you own a hairdressing salon or you work in a hairdressing salon, you're losing all your income. You might qualify for some small amount from the government, but your employees are out there not earning much, if anything. The owner who has to pay, at some point, they're going to have to pay all their fixed overhead costs, including the regional taxes, their local taxes. They are probably going to really, really struggle. And I just have a hard time with the notion that, you know, everyone at the region of Durham is insulated, yet the small business owners and the retail workers, they're left to fend for themselves, and I just think it's unfair. And I think the small business owners are really going to take it on the chin. And I just want to say how disappointed I am on their behalf that the way this was dealt with today. I just cannot believe it.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. We're trying to get it back.
I'm sure I'll be ruled out of order. But I think it's ridiculous that how this was handled today. And I just want to say, you can shut me up, but the small business owners that I'm speaking on behalf of, and the people that work in restaurants and retail,
point of order.
You're telling them they're not important. Thank you.
Councillor, first of all, the point of order was called by Mayor Carter. Councillor Neal is finished. Councillor Neal, the procedure that was used today is the standard procedure that we used. We didn't do anything that was not part of the process. Our economic development team, led by Simon Gill, has been working with the boards of trade and the chambers, doing frontline collecting of all the data that they're putting forward, working with members that are members or non-members of those organizations to make sure the province and the federal government and we here at the region have that information. The information, we're working with your lower tier economic development officers to gather and do that, and making sure that the residents, the business leaders in our communities are absolutely aware and that we can collect that data and send that. And will we have to do something down the road based on what is not happening through the federal or provincial government? That may be, but today your comments, well, I didn't stop you, I allowed you to continue, I think were unfair, and I will leave it at that. Now, I'll ask the CAO to respond if she chooses.
I think the key thing that I would like to point out is when you look at the services that the region of Durham provides, the vast majority are considered essential services, and that is why our staff are all fully engaged. Even those working at home, and as I said, things such as our call centers are all being are all being operated by staff at home, and the call volumes have gone up by several 100%. So I'm very comfortable that we are working well, and staff's time is well invested, and that we're continuing to deliver the services that the residents of Durham need, including the businesses of Durham.
So, members of council, as I finish and I was making my final comments for today's meeting, I really want to say thank you to our DEMO team for the work that they do. They meet 3 times a week. They are doing amazing work. To our long-term care staff who have lost the support of all the volunteers and family members that work in those facilities, who have answered the call, and how we've been able to move people around is simply amazing. And that we are delivering every service that we did before, from call centers to the pick collection of waste to our transfer stations to our hazardous facilities. We have been meeting the needs of our residents during this terrible time. We're also dealing with the issues related to policing and EMS and the great work that they're doing, and at the lower tiers, the great work that your fire departments and staff are doing. So here we've been able to move almost all of our staff out of this building, including all of our call center people, to be able to work from home. I want to give accolades to our IT department for what they've been able to do to get those secure connections to those staff members that are still doing their work, and to all the regional employees who come to work every day and continue to do a great job. I also want to wish you an Easter weekend that is memorable with your families, but please do it by FaceTiming, Skype, or a phone call. And now I will go to Councillor Ash for bylaw number 19-2020, moved by Councillor Ash, seconded by Councillor Bob Chapman. Councillor Ash?
Yes, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman that bylaw number 1920 be passed.
Members of council, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed. That carries. Councillor Ash, confirming bylaw, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman that bylaw number 2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Regional Municipality of Durham at their special meeting held on 8th day of April 2020 be passed.
Okay, on the bylaw, members of council, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yay.
Opposed? None. That carries. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Councillor
Motion to
Smith.
adjourn.
Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Pickles. On the adjournment, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That carries. Enjoy a Easter weekend connected to your family by either phones or Skype or FaceTime. All the
Happy
best
Easter, everyone.
and be safe. Thank you.
So understanding that the science is not perfect yet, our recommendation is to trust that it can live for a very long time on surfaces and therefore needs appropriate cleaning. Appropriate cleaning truly is your household cleaners that can, ideally with a little bit of bleach, will certainly take care of it. So your household wipes and your household products are more than adequate for cleaning. And I would strongly encourage folks, as they're thinking about cleaning, to really pay attention to what you touch. We have very common touch points within all of our homes. Your TV converter, your stove, your microwave handles, all your doorknobs. So give really serious consideration and pay attention to what you touch, and that will very clearly drive where you ought to be cleaning on a more frequent basis.
Now, like myself, when I go out and get groceries for my family and I bring it in, I actually sanitize my groceries. Is that something people should be doing as a precaution, or is that like going overboard?
There hasn't been any guidance around sanitizing